We are going through our missions and values series here, and so I get the opportunity to speak today about outward focused. And this is a big topic. It's an awesome topic, but it's also a humbling topic. When I got this charge to take this message forward, I was like, man, the weight of that thought being outward focused. And the weight of it is humbling because how am I supposed to be someone that carries the name of Christ to others and make sure that I'm doing it? The thing that's humbling about it is because I don't think that I'm that good at it. I hope I am. I have a heart for it, but I know that, man, if I was evaluating all the time, I think I come short a lot, and I didn't give enough time, and I wish I would have gone more and witnessed more and been more evident and bold in my witness to the world. So today we're going to talk about outward focus and what it means or what it takes to be outward focused. What does it really take to be an outward focused person? There's a clarifying statement in this value, for it says we must be outward focused, but we must go to the one unreached. So it's not just about being here and in this church and having kind of this mindset of, well, we're going to be outward focused and who are the visitors today? But we are actually going to be going out into the world and speaking the gospel. What I like best about outward focused is it's not inward focused. Sometimes the church can get so inward focused and talking among themselves and fellowship that we miss, hey, there's the greater thing we need to be doing, and it is out and reaching the world. So how do we do that effectively? So let's talk about what it's going to take today to do that. In Mark chapter 1, these are the clarifying verses for outward focus. It's Jesus talking here. He replied, let us go somewhere else. So the disciples have come to him and said to him, all men are looking for you. Where have you been? Come on, we got this big crowd here. And Jesus says to them, let us go somewhere else to nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. And he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. So this is Jesus recognizing, hey, there's a group here and we can be ministering to them, but this is what we really need to do. Now this comes in line with Jesus' story, even about the parable about the 99 and the one lost sheep. And talking about how the shepherd will leave the 99 and go look for that one lost sheep. So this is the way that Jesus' ministry was. This is the way he conducted himself. This is what he is calling us to do as a church and moving forward, being outward focused. We are going to the one unreached. So what does it take? It takes this first. I think it takes your head. We have to get into our minds that this is something that needs to happen. If we have always in our mind, I need to be outward focused, then who is it that we're talking to? Who is it we're trying to reach? Who is it we're willing to go the extra mile to try to win for Jesus Christ? Look at this verse here. This is the first thing we need to know is this: all authority is given in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. This commission is given to us again in Mark. In Mark chapter 16, verse 15, it says, he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. This is something we have to make sure is in our mind and in our head all the time. Jesus gave us this great commission, so we need to go out and preach the gospel to all the world. So this first thing I want to tell you about that is remembering that this is our commission. Jesus, when he gave us these words, it wasn't the great suggestion. It was actually the Great Commission. And he says, go into all the world. Look, you can go through all the words in the Greek, and you'll find out that the word go means go. So it's the implied you go into all the world and preach the gospel. And so we are to be those people that understand in our mind, we are supposed to do this. But it's more than that. We have to understand this other thing. In order for it to be in our head, we need to know our world. Jesus said he's going to be with us when we go out into the world. And then he said, I will be with you to the end of the age. Or other translations said, I'll be with you through the end of the earth or the end of the world. So what does it mean to know our world? Because you can't reach the world if you don't know it. If I were to ask you today, do you know what the dominant world view is for today? Would you be able to answer it? Well, we're thinking that through, and I'm going to reach my world, and how do I do that? There's a great book out by Jay Moon and Bruce Simons, who these two men were missionaries, and in research with anthropologists, they started to develop and come up with the worldviews and what they look like through different regions of the world. In their book, Intercultural Evangelism, and evangelism is just a word that means reaching people with the gospel. They came up with these 4 different worldviews and different regions of the world. And so one was about guilt and justice. Now, this was the one that primarily is about us and what it used to be as far as a worldview here in the United States. So we would talk about we are guilty of sin, and Jesus paid it all. That's the justice piece. Isn't that awesome? Like, I am lost in my sin, and Jesus found me. All these wonderful pieces about guilt and then justice coming in and God bringing those things together. So back in those days when this was a real dominant worldview, things like the 4 spiritual laws where it talked about, here's the state that I'm in, and Jesus paid that price, and now you can be free of that sin. And it's an awesome story about guilt and justice. The next one is about power and fear. And we're talking about power and fear in the sense that Jesus has the power over fear and over the things we have anxiety about. Isn't that an awesome story? Just to think that Jesus' power on the cross and through the resurrection now gives you power. So something you might fear even in death would be something that he has taken care of. So the power over that fear and over the sin and over the things that are happening in our life, Jesus has the power. And so it's important that this is a worldview that is shared. Another one is about shame and honor. And so how deeply sometimes sin can drive us into this place of shame. And I need relief from it. And how does this happen? And Jesus, he is the one who invites us into his family. He adopts us as his children, and we become him in that place of shame and being lost is now gratified and taken care of because Jesus honors us and shows us that honor in our life and puts us in a place we don't belong or don't deserve. The dominant worldview today, according to these researchers, is that of indifference and community. Indifference and community with purpose. So, and that transpires to more than just our culture here, but because of the internet and the travel and the smaller world that we are, that is an influence throughout the world, and primarily through millennials and Gen Z. So think about that. That's the majority of people now coming into the world, and they are developing. They are becoming the next generation that's going to take over and be a part of things. Actually, millennials are pretty much running many of the world today, and so they have this worldview that has an indifference to Christianity, the church, all these kind of things. What's interesting about it is I'm helping you understand a worldview. So we got the head thing. We're still talking about the head when it comes to what it takes to reach people for Christ. If they're indifferent to the Bible, to Christianity, to faith, and that indifference is interesting because it's not about antagonistic. It's not even about being atheist. It's about Meh, I don't care. So you're telling me about Jesus, you're telling me about your church, you're telling me about faith? Meh. So I don't know if that's you sitting here today, but maybe you think you're unique in that, but I got to tell you, you're unique, just like everyone else. It's the world view, right? So if you got that I'm just, nah, I don't know. I don't know about this, and I don't know if I even care. So that's where the world is. So that, it kind of informs us, because if you get indignant about it and you're like, how come you can't believe in God? How come you wouldn't go to church? Look, you're already losing. You have to, in this worldview, understand, man, this is something they don't really care about. But something they do care about is community, something that brings them together and has some purpose. So that gives so much power to a life-giving community, and thoughts of welcome home. I don't know if you've heard that around here before, but that thought is more powerful sometimes than what they're wrestling with in their faith. And so if we can build communities and bring people into a relationship and fill some lonely moments in life and start to have purposeful, meaningful conversations, then we're starting to build somebody who will look at faith and we'll start examining it, because they've come into a relationship and trusted in people and trusted in somebody, became a friend to you. When I was, I want to give you this third point, because this is an important one as well. Learn how to lead somebody to the Lord. So this is all, again, things that we have to do in our head. Just be able to know how I can reach somebody for Christ. Do you know how to do that? If I were to say, hey, can you lead me through a couple scriptures, show me how to bring somebody to Christ, would you be able to do that? I have a wonderful invitation for you. This past season, we led the 301. Pastor Christian led one group, and I led the other. At the end of that group, we show and teach about evangelism and what it means to reach somebody for Christ. And there are about 5 or 6 different ways, like different little outlines, that simple verses, take somebody through, here's the points, and maybe be able to lead them to the Lord, to pray and ask Jesus Christ to be the Lord and Savior. Because nobody's really awesome at it, right? I mean, that's some of the trepidation I had with even preaching today, and the humility that's in that. Because I mean, who's going to get up on stage and say, I'm really good at this, so listen to me? That doesn't sound right. Like, you're going to get saved, and you're going to trust Christ, and we're going to pray. And it just doesn't happen that way, right? But if we learn how to lead somebody to Christ, we're at least equipped and we're ready for it. And we talk about that in the 301 class. The very first session in the 301 class is awesome for me, because it's about a person's testimony, and you share how you come to Christ. And so I want to give you a very interesting point about the Bible and what happened in Acts, because Acts, many people came to Christ in the book of Acts, the new church, the forming church. And it wasn't because we had all these wonderful verses from Paul that you got to share with everybody. It was because of the testimony of the saints and those who came to Christ. So your greatest avenue, when you think about it, is my story. And then if you can add some verses and some skill to drawing a person together for Christ and being that outward focused person and knowing this, then you're doing well. I learned how to take a series of verses and lead somebody to the Lord when I was just a teenager. I was growing up in the church, and we made it an active, weekly duty to go out on the streets and evangelize. And for a teenage boy, that was a scary deal, because we were going out there, we were partnered up, and we were actually going door to door, knocking on people's doors and talking to them about Christ. And what I had in my arsenal was the Romans Road. Here's the series of verses, and the goal was, within 5 or 10 minutes of meeting a stranger, they're going to bow their head, because I shared these scriptures, bow their head and pray and make a life change decision. And you think about, wow, that happened with the stranger. And that's I don't know how well that's going to work out. And it was tough because it was like door-to-door salesman type of stuff. And so there was a ton of rejection. And man, I had to build up a lot of nerve and confront, a lot of different things when I was on the door with whoever my partner was for the day. And we had more rejection than we had acceptance. And so we would find out one or two people that might pray with us and ask Jesus to be the Lord and Savior, or consider taking the pamphlet we had and coming out and checking out the church. But man, those were times when I put a lot of things into practice and had a lot of nerve, but a very, very tough way to present the gospel. Matter of fact, I could tell you a bunch of stories from those days, but two of the wildest stories was this. I went out with one person who was a little older than me and bolder and brash. I mean, this guy was like, he was whoa, you're going to get saved. And, he was a door-to-door salesman for sure. And so we knocked on this one door. And this guy came out and he started to talk about the church we were from and all this stuff with the introductory things. And he said, "No, I don't care about this." And he slammed the door like it was rough. And so I took off down the stairs and headed down the street. I can take a cue. My friend was not this way. He decided to knock on the door again. And I could hear the guy through the door as I'm halfway down the block, right? And he says, "Go away." And my friend says, "I just want you to know that Jesus loves you, sir." And in John 3:16, it says, "For God so loved the world." And he was just deciding to holler through the door at this guy to try to win him for Christ. And this wasn't working out well for him, not at all. And like I said, I'm down the block, and I'm looking back at whatever this guy's doing and why. And the guy opens the door again, and he hollers at him, "I told you to get off my step, and you better get out of here." And I thought the guy was going to, take a swing at him. So I was a little bit jarred, but also I was like, you know what? If this guy takes a swing at him, I'm going up and I'm throwing a few punches too, because this guy, what are you doing? This isn't the way you do it. And so I vowed I am never going witnessing with this guy again. This just isn't happening. One time I was out, and my sister, she's just about a year or so younger than me, we were coming up a pathway, and there was a lady in our backyard, and she had this big black Rottweiler. And we were between a car and the house, and I was in front of my sister. She didn't see what was going on, but I had full view. And this dog saw us, and he started bounding toward us. Oh, my goodness. And I am embarrassed about it now, but when the dog took a leap up into the air, and so I ducked like this, and that dog just took out my sister, man. Oh. Thankfully, the owner was right behind and, booted the dog. And anyway, out of guilt, that person came to church at least twice after that visit there. But so those were tough times of learning how to do it. But I learned at a young age how to lead somebody to the Lord. Do you know how to do that? I encourage you today, learn how to do it. Come to the 301 class. It's a great way to learn how to share your faith. The next thing I want you to know about what it takes to be outward focused, it takes your head, it takes your heart. Man, it really takes a heart of evangelism to always think, I need to be outward focused. I need to be reaching somebody for Christ. Like, why do we do all these outreach events, and why do we send people out in different ministry groups and try to reach the world? It's because of a heart for evangelism. Here's something I want you to know about the heart. Jesus replied, he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like to it. Love your neighbor as yourself." I talked earlier about the Great Commission. This is called the Great Commandment. to love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Most of the evangelism tools and books you're going to read today are marrying these two concepts. So in my little, this is how you lead somebody to the Lord kind of presentation when I was a teenager, there was not room to build any kind of relationship. So when you have a heart for evangelism, or you have a heart that is outreach focused, the best response is to be outward focused. So that's just a little bit of our response to loving our neighbors. So if I truly love my neighbor, I am truly going to be the kind of person that is a witness and bringing them to Christ, and I want to be outward focused. The next thing I want you to know about the heart is that the last thing people want is it's to be our project, someone we are working on. The most effective witness occurs in the context of authentic, caring relationships. This is by Greg Ogden in his Discipleship of Essentials. So this guy's saying, hey, nobody wants to be your project. Like if you're becoming friends with someone just so that you could maybe witness to them, then look, that stinks. How's about you be a friend and see what God does with that relationship and how he allows some things to happen and to move. Here's the next thing I want you to know about the heart, is that the heart of compassion grows as you hear about their life. One incredible evangelism tool right now is called BLESS. And what it means to bless is this. Each letter it's an acronym. The first letter means begin with prayer. Man, just begin with prayer. God, I want you to bless this person. I don't know much about them, but they're in my life right now, and I want you to bless them and use me somehow in their life. The next one is listen. And the way I learned evangelism, we didn't listen to anything. It was all about, look, I got these here verses we're going to share, and then you're going to pray with me, and that's it. And that was, the basics of it, and we had a goal in mind, and it was about me and getting my things out there on the street. The next thing was about eat. Wow. So how simple is that, right? And that in this book, it talks about, hey, just having a meal together is very, very valuable and very, very important to building that relationship. The second one is about serving. How do I serve this person? Find out ways that I could be helpful in their life. And the last thing is the story. That's my story. That's sharing my testimony and getting to the place and building such a friendship and a relationship that eventually I get to share what wonderful things God has done in my life. The next thing about the heart that I like to share is that when you have an outward-focused heart, you will always find ways to build community with those in need of Christ. Some of the best families in our church here I have seen bring their neighbors and their friends because they have been this kind of person. And they find ways to build communities. I've been to Christmas parties with some of these friends and then eventually see their friends show up in church. And I'm like, wow, look at that. And then I remember a time when another family in our church was just, for whatever reason, God just kind of blessed them and their neighbors started coming to church with them. And I was like, man, look at what God's doing, just because they were out focused and they started to build that community of faith with people in need of Christ. So when we get too inward focused and we think it's about what we do in the church, then sometimes the sad thing is we lose our focus, and it's possible that people that know God and know Christ for the longest time never reach out because they've started to build into this new faith community and not looking out. So it takes a real twist in our heart to say, I need to be looking out. Who are those that I can reach for him? The last thing it takes, I said your head, your heart, it takes your feet. It takes your feet. Let me read these verses that are very, very beautiful out of the passage here. One is in Isaiah, and the next is in the New Testament, just quoting this verse. But how beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns. And then in Romans it says this, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Man, it's time to use our feet and get busy. It's time to reach people for Christ. In one of his latest books, Francis Chan talks about this, and he talks about it in terms, it's kind of comical, he talks about it in terms of a father asking his child to go and clean their room. And I'm saying her because I raised 2 daughters, and I remember what those rooms looked like. But he'd say, I'd say, go clean your room. Okay, Dad. Goes up to the room. There for hours. Nothing happens. But they call their friends over, and their friends have a great time. They're talking about strategies and how they can, clean this room, and this room is going to look great, and it's going to be beautiful if you put these things here and those things there, the toys in the box. And then they start to pray over it. We're going to pray that this room will be clean. And man, they had some great times. They even wrote songs about it. Like, how are we going to clean this room? This room will be cleaned every day. Something like that. The Big Comfy Couch song, you know that one, the tidy song. All right. So this is what's happening with what we kind of do today. We have lots of great meetings about it. We pray about it, but Jesus, just like this father's just saying, just go out and do it. Like, go clean your room. That's what I want. What Jesus wants of us is for us to just go and be the feet that he's calling us to be. In our 301 class, we have this quote from Matt Chandler. So, relational evangelism, go for it, so long as it turns into actual evangelism. In order for you to reach somebody for Christ, you have to talk about Christ. You have to do the work. Let's do the work. How are we going to do it? We have a wonderful opportunity for this church. We talked earlier in announcements about Friend Day. That's perfect. Like, that's a great opportunity for you. Say, I'm not really that bold. I don't know if I can really share my faith. I'm still learning. That's all right. What we want you to do is Bring a Friend Sunday with us, because it's going to be powerful. It's going to be magical. We actually have invites that you're going to get when you go out the door. When you go out the door, there's these ones here. So we want you to invite a friend that day. This is the perfect way for us to do the feet part with the rest of the community. And then these invites, they're really kind of cool because they're like those paper football things, Do you remember building those in school? There you go. There you go. Use these to invite your friends because it's a lot of fun. And it just says, Bring a Friend Sunday. And on the back, it's really fun because it says, will you come with me? Yes, and also yes. And so invite them. You know what another thing we're going to do that day? We're going to have a luncheon here for all the young adults. So everybody in their 20s going to GMU or any other university around here, we want you to invite your friend because we know that it can be difficult. The whole idea is I invite my friends to church, and then we go out and have lunch somewhere. We invite them to our house, and there's a great conversation we can have for the Lord. That conversation is something that we built for you. Pastor Christian wrote a great guide on how to just kind of talk through someone about the beginnings of faith and all those kind of things. So we're going to do that for especially the young adults in our church. Because when we talk about going out to eat and doing all those kind of things or have somebody to your house, that's just not happening a lot of times in the young adult world. So we understand that. We want to help you. It's the day is May 5th. It's Cinco de Mayo. We're going to have taco bar and a nacho bar for you. So you come and go through that guide and invite your friends, as many as you can, because we want to have them here. Because otherwise you don't have that opportunity, right? You might be inviting them to a dorm room, which could give like a wrong impression, like it could be creepy. Like, don't be creepy. Or inviting them over for ramen noodles, which is fine, but you can now give them a really decent meal and have some fun with them. So think about that when it comes to inviting that friend, and make use of this opportunity here at the church, because We all have to do it. We all need to reach people for Christ. We all need to be outward focused. And how are you going to do it? Make Friend Day that day that we corporately as a church put feet to the things that we say we want to do and being outward focused.